I can sell quality all day, every day. You don't even need to be the least expensive guy, right? People will actually pay a little more for quality, if they know that. And that early on, that was a big part of our success.
Welcome back to Beyond the Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Branson Bowen, and we are sitting down with Paul Goddard with Impaul Construction. Paul, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it. Let's get to know who Paul is and kind of what you're about. We can go as far back as you want, from born and raised and your family history, and then, you getting up to starting Impaul and see where that goes.
From the Northeast, my family moved down here. My dad worked for Bell Company, so at the time. And so started third grade at Castleberry Elementary.
Okay.
And went to South Seminole Middle School and then graduated at Oviedo High School.
You're basically a Florida native at that point.
Nah, you can't say that unless you're born here. My kids are born here, but you technically can't say that. But yeah. So I've been here a long time. When I graduated from Oviedo High School, I was too hyper to sit still.
Yeah.
And started as a apprentice, carpenter's helper.
Sure.
At the time, Oviedo was one of the fastest growing cities in the United States of America. And certainly for 10 years after, it was top 10 growing city,
right? And
got a lot of experience in a really short period of time as a carpenter, and a lot of GCs that were carpenters. Everybody built to your frame. So you're blocking heights and you're dealing with MEPs and you're putting all those things together and you're coordinating finishes and all these trades. So that experience was just instrumental.
So have you always known that you wanted to get in construction? Because you started very early.
I'm a team guy.
Yeah.
So I always liked putting together teams.
Sure.
And then I liked to try and optimize teams. And how can we improve? How can we do better? And so that was always very young. I had crews of carpentry crews, and we would, go and frame houses and custom homes in Winter Park and College Park and do all those things. So I think I've always just enjoyed putting things together. Yeah.
So what drew you to construction? Was it just opportunity?
Really, I drew a line down the page and likes and dislikes.
Yeah. Pros and cons.
Yeah. And it's like, I didn't want to be inside all day, every day.
Right.
Yeah. Don't put me at a desk,
right?
Under fluorescent lights.
Right.
I wasn't going to be able to do it at that time. I wasn't mature enough, focused enough to be able to do that. So I can start early in the morning and I can be done at 3 p.m.
Right.
I'm in.
Right.
Yeah.
So what led you to starting Impaul Construction? Like, what was that journey like?
Yeah. So, I graduate college in 95. I work for Lennar Homes for a couple of years. So I understand corporate, how does corporate work, sure, and paperwork and those types of things. And then I finished out, I rounded off my pedigree at a general contracting firm in Winter Park, a larger group. And when I spun from them, I spun as an owner's rep. I really, when I worked there, I connected all the dots. All the things that I had learned, I connected all the dots. And so when I spun as an owner's rep, so I had 3 primary clients, and I traveled the state of Florida doing site selection for them and doing due diligence on real estate contracts, and then hiring civil engineers, entitling parcels, getting site plan approval, hiring architects, getting building permits and site permits, and then taking those and bidding those documents to general contractors. Sure. Receiving bids, assimilating them, giving them to the owner, and then administering the project from the owner's side all the way through. And I did that for a couple of years, and about 2 years in, my clients were like, "Well, you know how to build it. Why don't you build it?" Okay. And I had a license, and I said, "Okay." So when I started, I had 3 clients, and I just was able to just put it all together, fairly easily.
Right. It was almost that opportunity arose, so you just took it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. As soon as I started, I immediately had a greater amount of respect for everyone I had ever worked for.
Why is that?
Because of the actually building a company, like putting a company together and going, oh yeah, he had to do this, or she had to do this. This person had to do these things, and go, oh wow, this is challenging. it was kind of like, you don't know about this yet, but you'll know about this. I remember the first time I changed my son's diaper.
Mm-hmm.
I went, oh, my parents did this for
Yeah,
me.
right. It's like that
Right?
click.
It really was. You could almost hear it. It was audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
hear. You could
That's
hear
that's
that.
really cool. I mean, a lot of times that opportunity has to happen. Some people make that opportunity, and some people just kind of fall into it. So it seems like that transition, especially early on, was very organic for you. Having those 3 clients, saying, "Okay, well, I can just build these things, and I'll keep doing the same thing that you're doing." Did you still do site selection for those clients, or you just kind of stuck to just building?
I continued to do that, and I mean that's probably one of the biggest points of differentiation for our group in Orlando. Is for a group our size, we still carry that skill set forward.
Right.
We have clients, a lot of different clients that come to us on referral that say, "Hey, you can help us do this," almost like fee development.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Impaul. Who's Impaul? What do you guys do? Why? What markets do you focus in? What kind of separates you guys from the pack?
So because I love construction, and everybody's got a bad construction story, right? You can talk to anybody, and everybody can tell you about.
Sure.
If not them, somebody's got a bad
Sure.
construction story. So
It's a challenging industry.
it is. It can be a very challenging industry. Yeah, and I wanted to create a professional organization. So we carry, as a general contractor, we carry a license from the Department of Business and Professional Regulations. And as a professional, you should conduct yourself accordingly.
Sure.
Right? Just like the architects and the engineers and the accountants and the attorneys, they all got a license from DBPR. And so just like if you were to walk into a design firm, an architectural firm, and say, I want to build a restaurant, or I want to build an industrial building, or I want to build, they're going to take you and put you with a group of people that can guide you through that process. Mm-hmm. Very similarly, that was my vision for M Paul General Contractors. Yeah, and again, there's a large portion of the work that we do even today that the phone rings and we just say, how can we be of service? Right. And you just take care of that client, and you can help them connect the dots. You're just doing something that we do all day, every day, and take for granted what we know and the connections that we have.
Sure. So let's talk about relationships, right? So starting any company, relationships are, especially even in this industry and most all industries, relationships are really important. What were some of the key relationships, especially early on in your career, that really were a catalyst for you to continue to build, continue to grow? And did you seek out those relationships, or were those kind of just organic that continued to build?
So I'll tell you, so many things that people say, the cliche, right? And the term, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Sure.
Relationships, I can't even put an emphasis on the value of a solid relationship. Sure. If someone can trust you and refer you, or you can trust somebody, it's a bigger deal than I realized until this past 3 years. Mm-hmm. When I spun from the general contracting firm that I worked for, I sat down with the owner, and I said, hey, I want to start my own gig. And he said, well, here's how you do it. And I had 3 pages of notes, and he gave me my bonding company, referral to my bonding company, referral to the insurance group, and a referral to the accounting firm. And I still, 23 years later, still use those same firms. Sure. And still use those people. And the same thing with the subcontractors that we deal with. 85% of the subs that we use, they're our partners. Sure. We use them over and over. They know us, we know them. Mm-hmm. So it's not a revolving door. They know that, this isn't the only job we're going to do with this group. They know we'll see them down the road. Right. And it's hugely valuable, because in our industry, and Orlando's not a great big town. Right. So
it's a big small town. That's what I call
it. It's a big small town. Okay. Yeah, that could be a podcast. The subs they're our partners. They know us. They know our accounting. They know that we'll be true to our word. which is, very important. They know we're going to dot I's and cross T's, and we're actually looking out for them.
Sure.
We're looking out for their best interests. We want to make sure that not only do we get paid, they get paid.
Right.
And the process, the process flows.
So obviously construction is really intense, right? It's capital intensive. You got to meet deadlines. You've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to say. As a general contractor, your job is to lead the project, of course. But you could have 32 different type of subs, if not more, on a project. How do you go about during those projects or even implementing that strategy within your team of keeping those relationships? Of course, on the accounting side, looking out for them is great, but how are you continuing to manage that relationship and kind of nurture that relationship as the project goes along?
The right people with the right skill sets in positions in the organization. Mm-hmm. So the construction manager in the field has an experience. He understands what he's doing. He's managing construction.
Right.
He's not a babysitter. He's not somebody that just fogs a mirror.
Right.
This is somebody that has, a vocabulary and an intellect, mm-hmm. and can draft an email and communicate. And then again, team building. The guy in the field is working with a project manager in the office, and we're building teams. We're creating teams. I can't tell you how many times that, a communication flow. I'll give you two examples of the same thing. The electrician has a question on connecting something in the HVAC system, and asks the superintendent, construction manager in the field. He calls his project manager in the office. Project manager calls the electrical project manager, who calls his guy in the field, who calls him back, and then calls the HVAC project manager, who calls his guy in the field, and calls him back and calls our project manager, who calls our construction manager in the field, who then relays the information.
Right.
Instead of the construction manager in the field going, "Hey man, come over here," and "Hey, come here, let's talk about this."
Right.
And they talk about it, and it's done.
Right.
Right. And if there's like, "Oh, well, I didn't have that in my scope," or "I did," well, let's look at that here. But no matter what, it has to be done, and let's coordinate those things.
Right.
So it's really about the way we communicate.
Sure.
Again, a cliche. It's all communication.
And would you say that same communication is transferred into the communication between the general contractor and the owner? Maybe not that granular, right? But still the principle of the communication.
I would say yes. It depends on the owner. Some owners they just want to be so involved, right, all the time, and you're kind of giving them a bit of the Heisman. And there's other owners that just want to close their eyes and walk away,
right,
and just be like, "Just tell me when you're done."
Right.
And yeah, so it just depends. The biggest thing I think with owners is you gain their trust, and then you do everything you can to maintain that trust.
Right. I tell the guys a lot of time, that are in the field or our project managers that oftentimes the owner doesn't need to know everything, right? Because you want to be transparent, but obviously there's some stuff on the construction site that, the owner doesn't need to be involved. We need to figure it out. Tell the owners that we figured it out and that we're going to continue to move forward. Now, how, as we're continuing to build those relationships and as we continue to build those relationships with those subs so they keep coming back, how is, let's talk about a little bit about the project closeout and the process in which the ownership, the relationship between the general contractor and the ownership is continuing to transpire, because you guys do quite a bit of repeat clients, right?
We do.
Right. And so how has that relationship continued to be managed so that repeat client continues to grow and you continue to work for that same?
It really just matters. Just do you continue to do what you say you're going to do and follow up, maintain that, that communication flow,
mm-hmm.
With that client. I always say there's always something that's going to happen on a construction project, right? And it's just how you handle that.
Right.
It's how you deal with that. Some things can be real itchy and scratchy.
Right.
And it usually has to do with time or money.
Sure.
Or quality. It's one of those three things, right, always. And if you address it professionally and you address it right up front, yep, that was us. We'll take care of it.
Right.
Or the architect didn't have it, nobody knew about it. How it's going to be a cost. How do we address that fairly, reasonably, right?
Sure.
I'm a simple guy, right? If we do nothing, it costs nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If we do something, there's a value for that.
Sure.
And as long as you represent that value, true and right and just, people don't usually have a problem with that.
Yeah. So what's been the biggest challenge as Impaul continues to grow? Because you guys are on what, 23 years?
23 years.
23 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today.
Yeah.
So it's a long time. What has been the biggest challenge as the company continues to grow?
I mean, first and foremost, I think it's talented people, finding talented individuals, finding people with a skill set that want to be dedicated to an organization long term and grow with an organization and continue to do those things.
Right. And what's been the biggest success that you've found?
I mean, I think your biggest disappointments and your biggest successes in life in general are people.
Right.
Right. So when you take somebody that is unsure of themselves and maybe a little bit timid and shy, and you educate them and you coach them up and you watch that person grow in the industry and grow in themselves, and to me that's the biggest thing you can do for anybody is help them achieve their best selves.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you guys play a big part in developing your employees and your personnel to make sure that employee retainage continues to grow?
Yeah, I have no employees.
Yeah.
None. I only have team
members.
members. Yeah, I only have team members. Yeah. I'm a team guy.
Yeah.
So we encourage people to seek out avenues of growth always. We'll push them into some classes. ABC offers classes and some things like that. But if you're on a team and you're playing with high level skilled people, you want to be on that team.
Sure. Right.
And you want to stay on that team as long as you know enough, because some younger people don't really realize until they leave and go, oh, this ain't what I thought it was.
Right.
Right. And then they come back and we go, oh, I like this team.
Right.
Yeah. So we encourage people to grow. I mean, I would consider myself a lifelong learner.
Right.
So I don't know it all.
Right.
So yeah.
So how valuable has Impaul and your reputation been to the growth of the company?
The reputation comes on its own. Everybody has a reputation, so it's developed. It's not something that you're instantly given.
Sure.
You earn that.
Right.
Good or bad, you earn that. For me, I was always from the very beginning. I was always a big stickler for quality, because I was the primary sales guy, the business development guy. I can sell quality all day, every day. You don't even need to be the least expensive guy.
Right.
Right. People will actually pay a little more for quality.
Sure.
If they know that.
Mm-hmm.
And that early on, that was a big part of our success. And then it was just more of a feeling like they enjoyed being treated in a good way. They were treated respectfully. They were communicated with respectfully. There was communication. Technology has taken, I think, the two industries that are used technology the least, at least this was probably 5 years ago, was ironically education and construction. So now with technology coming forward, COVID did us a great favor, I think, in some aspects of people using technology and being able to communicate.
How big of an impact do you think technology is going to make as the construction industry continues to develop and technology continues to grow at a faster pace than we've ever seen? How big of a change do you think technology is going to actually impact the construction industry?
I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we say it's not going to, because it's affected every single industry, everything it's touched. The world is round, right? And it continues things continue to grow. And there's some really awesome things about technology.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some things, our children are into technology.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways. But I do feel like technology has already added so much to our industry and will continue to exponentially add so much. I'll give you a silly example, but I just saw something about a mechanical robot painting. You put it in a room, and it actually will paint the entire room and the ceiling, right? And you don't have to worry about somebody's safety as far as any kind of ingestion, anything like that. It's it's a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't call in sick. And as long as you've got clean walls and it's really now if you need something really intricate and ornate, well, then you need somebody that can be on a paintbrush.
Sure.
Right. And I don't know that you're ever going to replace that. I don't think ChatGPT is going to replace that.
Right.
Right. We think it might. Now that's where I might be falling short.
Yeah.
Like, right. 20 years from now, like, God, that guy was crazy.
Right. 20 years from now, we might not have anybody on the job site, just a bunch of robots running around.
That would be interesting.
That would. That kind of alludes to the second question, was that, like, where has technology probably going to impact the construction industry the most? Is that obviously, you see things like Red Team and Procore and the project management side. Is it more of a organization and communication realm, or is it actual personnel replacing, laborers and people on site? Which avenue do you think it's going to be affected the most? And then I have a follow-up question to that too.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think obviously the way that we're communicating, our group uses Red Team,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that if you utilize that software, it's got metadata.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you when somebody opens something. It tells you when they see it. There's just some really good ways of transferring information, because that's all we're doing is transferring information, communicating. And I think that there are going to be some positions like a machine that can paint, right? And you're going to be the technology is going to create a safer work environment. Let's face it, there are job sites where people put their lives at risk, whether they're aware of it or not.
Right.
It's a risky business as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think it's going to add to that side of it, and it's going to replace potentially some labor.
And so the follow-up question, historically, the construction industry is one of the oldest industries in the world. What do you think, as far as technology is concerned, the construction industry adaptation looks like? Do you think that construction professionals, personnel, even as from just day laborers, do you think that the adaptation is going to be like sudden, or is it a gradual adaptation to where technology continues to start to develop, or what? This is pure speculation.
I really feel like it's going to be the younger group
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be thinking more outside the box than the curmudgeons.
Right.
Right. This is the way I've always done it. Nothing's going to change the way that I do this. And a lot of times a younger generation steps in and says, "Hey, let me help you refocus this lens a little bit."
Right.
So I think, and that might be true in almost any industry. You've got some seasoned people that maybe are not as flexible to adjust, and then you've got some younger people that are really more willing to take a risk and
Right.
like, hey, let's see how this works, and let's just try this and see. More apt to maybe fail, but I think that's where we're going to see that.
Right. And I could see technology filling a void here shortly, right? I mean, we're seeing a lot of, labor shortages in the construction industry. Often kids don't want to go to school to be a plumber or electrician. It's more, different types of industries that they're pursuing. And I think there's going to create the void's already there. It's just how big does it get before technology starts to step in? But it's going to be interesting to see how the construction industry adapts to that and how receptive they become. And if it's going to be something like, like the iPhone, right? Everybody's got an iPhone. You practically can't if you don't have a phone or a laptop in today's time, it's very hard to get stuff done, right? And so, it's going to be interesting to see how technology continues to adapt, and if that void gets so big that the construction industry has zero choice to adapt or not,
I think I can see it both ways.
Yeah.
I absolutely can see it both ways, because with so many industries, you either, I'm of the age pre-computer. I took typing in high school, and I should have paid much better attention, because when am I ever going to need typing?
Yeah.
Because my brain that was my thought process. Right. So I was fortunate enough to grab onto the computer train and learn that. And if you didn't learn that, it was,
you got left behind.
You were absolutely left behind. Yeah, absolutely. Left in the dust. But we've seen technology come and go too, like a fax machine.
Sure.
Right. You see a fax machine. I remember when the fax machine showed up. That was oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's like, fax. What's that?
Yeah.
I don't think my kids know what a fax is.
Right.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, though, is you need something done at your house. And maybe you need 5 things done at your house. You might be able to use an app to get somebody to show up, but there's going to be a human being showing up at the door. And maybe you're not home. Maybe your kid's there, or your partner, whatever. And they have to greet this person. They have to be articulate enough to communicate. And you have to trust them to walk in the front door and do whatever work that needs to be done, and do it with a certain amount of quality and cleanliness, and exit.
Sure.
Right. So I think there's always going to be that human factor.
Right.
In our industry, especially in that realm, because those people are very hard to find.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree. There are certain aspects of the industry that do require, people. Even, I always say that technology can replace a lot of things. What it can't replace is the human element, right? The relational element. Technology is not going to be able to replace your ability to build a relationship with an owner to try to win a project, right? There's a certain level of things that you still need that human element. You need to build trust. You need to build, experience. You need to allow them to continue to, trust you to build their project, right? And so that's going to be very hard for technology to fill that gap. But I think, of course, there are certain instances where, that void can continue to be filled. Would you agree?
I think I would mostly agree.
Yeah.
I think we just went through a giant beta test called COVID, where probably people were doing business without ever being in proximity.
Sure.
Right. So you were on a Zoom call, you could see that person, but potentially, right? I think we were closing deals without even actually seeing the person.
Right.
And they were trusting to hire us.
Right.
When you're like, how does this work?
Can you please turn your camera on?
Please. Right.
Just put a face with the name.
And that's where I still, if at all possible, I want to go meet with the person. I want to sit in proximity and get a sense of, kind of get a feel. Right. Because some people we're really drawn to, and some people we distance ourselves from. Right.
Well, because that goes back into that relational piece too. Construction.
Right.
Aside from like small TI projects, you're talking 6-8 months, even a year and a half to build something.
Plus a warranty period.
Right. Which is forever.
And a day.
Yeah. Right. So, you still want to have that good feeling. Like, when I talked with Richard, one of his things was like, we never do a project unless we can meet in person. He said, because I want to be able to get that feeling that is.
I think he got that from me. Actually.
Yeah, right. Y'all learned from each other. Y'all talked about it on the back porch, huh? Yeah. So, it's very interesting to see. And I'm very curious to see what the next technology is rapidly growing at a significant high rate.
Sure.
And, if you look like where we were at 5 years ago with technology, and then you go back 10 years ago, like the speed has just continued to increase. So it'd be interesting just to see what, the next 5 years looks like, what the next 10 years looks like, and see where construction industry's at. So we'll wrap up episode 1. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about your construction journey and some of the cool things you guys are doing. So this has been a great episode with Paul Goddard at M Paul Construction. Join us next time for episode 2. See you soon.